Every song you've heard in the last 25 years is a lie. Not because the singers can't sing, but because the software keeping them in tune was never meant for music. It was meant to find oil. Andy Hildebrand wasn't a pop producer or a studio wizard. He was a geophysicist working for Exxon in the late 1970s. His world was oil fields, not hit singles. Picture this. Rows of computers crunching data from seismic blasts, all to help scientists figure out where to drill next. Hildebrand's specialty was making sense of the chaos, turning noisy echoes from deep underground into clear signals that could point to hidden oil. Every day, he wrestled with sound waves using math to pick out patterns buried in the noise. But the real plot twist happened at lunch in 1993. Over sandwiches with a colleague, someone joked about inventing a way to keep singers in tune, the same way Hildebrand kept seismic data in line. He grabbed a napkin and started sketching. Could the same math that found oil also fix a wobbly voice? For a man who had spent years translating Earth tremors into treasure maps, it was a question too good to ignore. Autocorrelation sounds intimidating, but it's really just a fancy way to spot patterns in a mess of noise. Imagine listening for a heartbeat in a crowded room. You record the thump-thump, then slide that recording over itself, looking for spots where the peaks line up perfectly. Every time the heart beats in the same rhythm, the spikes stack up like a high five between two identical sound waves. That's autocorrelation, matching a signal to a delayed version of itself to see what repeats. In math terms, you take your signal, copy it, and shift one version little by little. At each shift, called a lag, you multiply the two together and add up the results. The biggest spike tells you how often the pattern repeats. For a voice or a seismic echo, that is the fundamental period. Flip it around and you get frequency. Frequency equals 1 divided by period. That's the secret sauce, turning a jumble of wobbly sound into a single, steady pitch. It's the same trick whether you are looking for oil a mile underground or tuning a pop star's chorus. Once you see how the heartbeat lines up, you can nudge anything, rock layers or vocals, right into place. Antares Audio Technologies didn't start out as a household name. In 1995, Andy Hildebrand filed the paperwork and set up shop in California with a handful of code and a wild idea: bring oil-finding math into the music studio. The company's first big swing came 2 years later. In 1997, Antares rolled out Auto-Tune 1.0, a plugin that could run on the same computers producers use for mixing and editing tracks. Studio engineers cracked open the manual and found a tool that promised to nudge any off-key note back onto the right path, almost like spell check for singing. For the first time, pitch correction wasn't just a lab experiment or a custom fix for a superstar. It was shrink-wrapped and ready to drop into any digital audio workstation. That year, the buzz started spreading at trade shows and in the back rooms of recording studios. There was a new button that could fix a flat note, and nobody had to know. Auto-Tune had quietly entered the toolkit of modern pop, ready to change the sound of everything. June 1998, at Metropolis Studios in London. Cher steps up to the mic to record what will become one of the most recognizable vocals in pop history. Behind the glass, producers Mark Taylor and Brian Rawling are experimenting. They load up Auto-Tune, a tool so new that most engineers are still treating it like a magic trick you are not supposed to talk about. But instead of smoothing out Cher's pitch, they crank the retune speed all the way down to 0 milliseconds. No glide, no mercy, just an instant snap from one note to the next. The result? Every syllable transforms into a shimmering robotic leap, like a human voice beamed in from the future. Nobody in the room expects it to work, but the effect is hypnotic. When Believe drops later that year, it rockets to number 1 in 23 countries. Suddenly, what started as a technical accident becomes a global sensation. The auto-tune effect is not just a studio secret anymore. It is the new sound of pop, and the world can't get enough. Auto-tune works a bit like snapping Lego bricks onto a grid. Imagine a singer's voice as a wobbly line that is supposed to land on the neat squares of a musical scale. The software listens for the pitch, figures out which note it is closest to, and then bam, it locks the sound onto that exact spot. No drifting, no sliding, just a clean jump from wherever the singer landed to the right note. It is not about smoothing things out or making them sound natural. It is about lining up every sound to the invisible grid that music runs on. The result can be subtle, or if you set the speed to 0, robotic and unmistakable. This is the moment when the math takes over and every note falls perfectly in line. By 2003, nearly 70% of charting pop songs featured auto-tune somewhere in the mix. What started as an invisible fix had quietly reset the baseline for what a good vocal even sounds like. The more people heard perfectly tuned voices, the more our ears got trained to expect it, like swapping out home-cooked meals for fast food and then finding everything else bland. Producers didn't just use auto-tune to hide mistakes, they used it to lock in a sound that felt modern, flawless, almost machine-made. The idea of real singing started to shift. Imperfections that once gave a voice character now stood out like typos. The line between human and algorithm blurred, not just in the studio, but in the way everyone hears music now. Oil rig math turned into pop's secret sauce. And now, perfection is just the default for every voice you hear. We didn't just find oil, we engineered what human sounds like. Wild, right?